All right, we're back. It's been a minute since I've sat down with somebody that actually knows how to ride a snowmobile.
Oh, come on, man.
Sorry, Ross. Sorry, Jay. Sorry, Sane. No, I'm pumped. I've been saying it since day one when we started this. I kind of wanted to have you as a first guest, but we got Brett Turcotte in-house.
What up,
finally.
what up? Yeah, dude, we tried to put it together, but a lot of people don't understand that I'm like a full-time dad, full-time worker guy.
Yeah.
I got jobs outside of snowmobiling, so it's I got all these things that I want to do all the time, but I also have to be responsible. So we are, dude.
I've been keeping up on I've been keeping up on the whole family on the gram, and you guys treat summer like summer, which is cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, with the winter grind and everything, you know, I'm away and I'm doing clinics and I'm filming and I'm pushing myself. It's nice to take the time in the summer to just like enjoy it. And that's what we're doing here this week. Even, you know, it's like, we're going to go on a family trip. Let's load up the rig and put every toy possible inside of it and just go down to the States and see what we end up doing.
Yeah. It's cool to see it's become a family affair. I mean, you guys have spent so much time together at various events, from X Games to traveling the world doing freestyle shows. But now even Hudson, she's 6
now, yeah.
And then your wife, Nikki, everybody has a social media feed, and it's been fun. I'm like, all right, let's see the perspective from Nikki of what's going on today versus Brett. And like, I can get the whole day stitched together by watching everything you guys are doing, from whether racing Sur-Ron laps in the backyard or at the local track or building the pool and working in the backyard. Like, you guys are active.
Yeah, we're going for it. I mean, it's kind of like that never quit sort of style that we live with. And, you know, Nikki's kind of the driving force behind everything that we do. And now Hudson being 6 and racing moto and wanting to ride moto. And, you know, like at a week old, she was at her first snowmobile hill climb race and hearing mod sleds and turbos, and, you know, and so it's all just like second nature for her. And, you know, my son Ezra, he's 11. He's like, he has the most natural talent that I've seen on two wheels in a long time. And like, I'm not just saying that because he's my kid. Like, he's teachable, and I can, you know, I can tell him things like brake early, roll into the corner, get on the gas, you know, and like, and then he'll comprehend and be like, whoa, Dad, like that actually did feel faster. So, you know, as I kind of get older, I guess, and
don't say that. Stay young forever.
You know, as I call it grow, as I grow. Fair. And I take some time, you know, away from my profession to put it into my kids. And, it's really cool to have that whole family dynamic. You know, there's 4 kids and my wife and 2 dogs. Is like, our life is nothing short of good times. Yeah.
So it's in their blood, right?
For sure.
I grew up watching you, Brett, sled next days. First time I met you, I remember being starstruck. That you and Borchers were the first 2 guys I actually kind of like had like nervous jitters to meet.
Right.
Because I'd watched, God, what was it? The one that was engraved in my brain was like that 08 XP snowcross sled in the backcountry.
Sled Next 11.
Going huge. I'd seen you before that, but that segment specifically. So, and then I knew you from snowcross days. I grew up just outside Duluth, so I never missed the Duluth National Snowcross.
Totally. And so Hill City too, I feel like.
Yeah. So
I'm sure we bumped into each other at Hill City, didn't even know it.
So I've like followed your career for quite a while, but did your old man get you into it initially? I mean, you're blessed where you grew up. You grew up around awesome mountains in BC. Yeah,
I mean, let's take from the start. I mean, my dad, you know, was into dirt bikes and into motocross and obviously into snowmobiles. And for him, you know, if he wanted to go snowmobiling on the weekends, it was okay, well, you're going, but you're going to take your son. And so, you know, at 2, 3, 4 years old, like I was on the front of the snowmobile with my dad. This is long before like rubber mountain bars, right? Like this is like the steel bar that comes up
bouncing
over
your teeth off. Yeah,
you're smashing your teeth, you know, and he's like getting myself bleeding noses, and he's like grabbing a chocolate bar wrapper out of his pocket and wiping it. And, you know, eventually that led into him owning a Polaris dealership.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I grew up, like, no word of a lie, dude. The first word that I could spell as a kid was Polaris. I was at my grandma's house. So, my grandma had this property that had the shop, you know, on the property, and my dad and his brother and a couple other family members ran this, you know, this small Polaris snowmobile shop. And, you know, I'm 2, 3 years old, just cruising around there and just like picking up wrenches and hiding them on the mechanics and like,
man,
you know,
about full circle, huh?
just, just being a kid.
Yeah.
And this one time I go to my grandma's because I want to go and have lunch, and she gives me a notepad and a pen to keep me tied over while the soup's on the stove. And I couldn't spell mom. I couldn't spell dad. I was just so picture minded of like, I knew Polaris, and that's
signs around the
that's not a plug either. I mean, that's just how I grew up, you know? And so eventually, he's like, oh yeah, okay. Like, my son's really into it. It's time to get him his own snowmobile. And it started, with a small kitty cat, and that lasted for, a short amount of time. And then the kitty cat had a bigger motor in it and a longer track. And he's like, my dad, he raced stock cars. So he was so used to just like wrenching on stuff and like tweaking and, making mods. And he grew up, I grew up watching him race hill climbs. And so, from the time that I could be on my own snowmobile, we were going into the backcountry, and, this is back in the day when like backcountry hill climbs were a thing. And, we get hundreds people turning out for these races. And it was like legitimately just like the horseshoe crew. It was like as high as you could go without getting stuck. And that was your high mark. And then that's how you'd tell the winners of the class,
Yeah.
And so I grew through this whole progression of like the wedge chassis. And then I remember like, what would it be called? Gen 2, like kind of like the first round nose snowmobiles started coming out in the late 90s. And
like ZXs and all that.
Yeah.
Sorry, ZXs.
ZZ, what Canadian American? I don't know. I can't even remember at this point.
I'm cultured. Don't worry.
Yeah. And so it just became a part of me, and it became something that I looked forward to as a kid. And, I was already racing motocross in the summer. And so I knew how to jump things. I knew how to be behind handlebars. I was digging my own BMX jumps and, snowmobiles for me just kind of came, like I say, naturally. And it got to a point where I was just like, I was playing hockey. My brother and I were on the same team. He was 2 years younger than I am, and he was a goalie. And I was kind of like the huskier kid on the team. And so they put me on defense. And so, I'm, what am I, 10, 11 in there, and I am just cleaning the crease, dude. Like, you're not getting close to my brother. Like, no way. Like cross checks and trips and a couple of game ejections later, my dad sits me down. He's like, listen, son, like, it's either hockey or snowmobiles. You got to figure this out. He's like, you can't keep getting kicked out of hockey games. Like, I'm getting, I'm just getting ruined in the stands. And I'm like, I look, and he's like, we're either going to hockey games or going to the cabin on the weekends. I'm like, I want to go to the cabin.
Do you ever wonder what the other life would have been? I think back at like pivotal moments, like that sounded minor at the time, but that could have been, that might have been the life-changing moment for your
for
future
sure.
career.
Sure.
What if you went with hockey and you blew your back out or something?
Yeah.
And like you're just like working at the hardware store.
Like the other end of it, dude. There's some locals from around us that have like made big time NHL.
Right. It could go either way. But
did I miss my chance at being the next Connor McDavid? Or like
I think it worked out pretty well for you. Still, I don't think you got the short end of the stick.
No, it's so cool. And to see the other side of that too. My brother being 2 years younger, he chose the hockey path, right? So we would be up on the mountains riding snowmobiles, and my mom and my brother would be down at the rink, doing the hockey games, doing the tournaments. And still to this day, he is kind of down a different path than I am. Like I've taken this career of mine of snowmobiling and action sports, and I've ran with it, and he's went the other way. He's like, he's hunting and fishing and, carpentry and he's got his own life going on, and is like, it's so cool to merge those two. He'll send me pictures of big fish that he's caught or animals that he's gotten in the season. And I'm like, dude, I'm so jealous. And on the flip side of that, I sent him like a POW shot, he's like, oh, that must feel amazing.
Right. Yeah. It's cool that you have the same interest still. So you're able to share those. I always see you're out hunting every year. You call me, you're right by the border.
Yeah.
Hunting
dude,
elk
like
and everything.
Just over here.
Yeah. So it's a good mix. It seems like you guys are well balanced, and you've managed to kind of keep some of that stuff you grew up with while choosing this career path.
Yeah. And there's times, in the past couple of years, I've taken him out and I've put him on some mountain snowmobiles and taken him into the trees, and like the kid can hang. It's not that he's not talented. He just is like, no, I'd rather go chase mule deer when there's 4 feet of snow, And so it's cool. Even I put him on my snow bike, and I can go on like an aggressive tree ride, and he's like right there on a snow bike. Doesn't know how to ride a dirt bike at all, but I put him on the snow bike, and he's like, he's got it figured out.
That's rad.
Yeah.
Huh. Did the snowcross? I'm trying to figure out where the gnarly side of you came into play, because you raced pro open for quite a while out of Morgan's trailer.
Yeah. So my snowcross career, let's tail back into how this all started. So my dad had this snowmobile dealership. It was a Polaris dealership. One of the locals from our area was into snowcross. My dad sponsored him through the shop. And the one fall, he goes, you know what, guys, like we need to go get a big race. We need to go hit a big race. I had won some regional stuff in my first year. I was a 12-year-old kid. I was like, yeah, this is pretty fun, Dad. Like, I like this. And so we made this plan. We're going to go to Beausejour, Manitoba, which is, they do it's like one of the largest ice racing tracks actually in Canada where they do ovals. And the one year they were doing a CSRA sanctioned snowcross there. It was a national. And we show up, dude, so unprepared. Like, I show up there as a 12-year-old kid with a fan cool 440. It's minus 45 Celsius. Like, it is freezing out. Blessing in disguise is, like, we were kind of just like there, we didn't have any intentions. There was no like end game. We just wanted to try something new. Yeah. And it actually ended up being an off weekend at the time was WSA. Yep. It was an off weekend. And so Steve Taylor, fellow BC rider, was on Blair Morgan's factory team before I even was. It was him, Carl Kuster, and Blair all on the same team, early Ski-Doo days. So like they introduced the Rev. Okay. So they're on a weekend off. Steve's there on a prototype Rev. I enter all 3 junior classes on a fan-cooled sled and win them all. I'm like, oh, okay, like, well, maybe I'm pretty good at this snowcross stuff. And there's like a freestyle contest at lunchtime, and I do a heel clicker, and I win $20. And at the end of this weekend, Steve goes, hey, man, there's a guy I want you to meet. And we go over, and this guy's sitting in his Jeep, and he's, he doesn't get out. I'm like, oh, okay. And I look, and he's got hand controls. I'm like, oh, okay. I was young, like too young almost to comprehend what was going on. Right. And it was Jamie Ansu, which is the manager and sort of like talent scout of Blair Morgan Racing Team, and hands me his card, and he goes, you know what, like, on your way home, why don't you guys swing by the shop? It's on the, just off the highway, and I'd love for you guys to come check out the place. And, I grew up watching Blair on motocross, and then, those were the years where he was just starting to take off in snowcross. And my eyes were just the size of baseballs, dude. When he invited me to the shop, I was like, no way. Like this, Dad, we're going to go to Blair Morgan's shop.
12 years old.
Yeah.
Cloud 9.
And so you could imagine it. Yeah. I'm just like, can we go? And he's just like, yes, son. Like, it's an hour out of the way. We'll figure it out. And, I got to get back home and go logging next week, but we'll figure this out. So we go there, and it's like something out of a story, like out of a movie, dude. Like it's keypad entry into this fully tinted shop. You can't see into there because they're just prototyping these revs, and nobody's supposed to see them. And, there's a cold storage room, and there's just sleds torn apart and boxes of skis and parts. And I'm just like, whoa.
So did you see the Rev before?
I saw the Rev before it was even a thing, and it was like, Jamie brings us into his office. He said, listen, guys, like, there's kind of a reason I brought you in here. Like, your kid's kind of got something. And, I'm just standing in the shop looking up and just kind of spinning circles. And there's just like Blair's mechanics over there, tie wiring grips on, and like doing all that. And I'm like, just curious, like, what are you doing? And Gilles tells me. And long story short, that summer I get an email from Jamie saying, hey, we've got an offer for you. It's not too much, but I think there'd be something to get you going in the support side of things, and keep you in BC. School's important. You need to stay in school. You need to ride the school thing out. But we want to support you. We believe that you have something that we're interested in. At 13 years old, I signed my first professional contract with Ski-Doo, and I had a free snowmobile.
So you're telling me the one weekend shot in the dark, driving to Manitoba, ends in a pro deal with Blair Morgan Racing?
Yeah.
At that age, that's got to be hard to comprehend.
It's insane. I look at my kids at 13, I'm like, how do you give a professional contract to a kid at that age?
Right.
And my dad kind of, he's like, oh, I don't know if we're going to take this deal, son. Like there's lots to think about. And I'm like, we're taking it, dude. And so all summer long, I'd be like out back digging, and there's no cell phones at this point. The landline rings, and my dad's got like a big megaphone on our shop, right? And I'm in the back 40 digging BMX jumps.
Being a kid.
Yeah, landline rings, and my dad answers, and Dad, he goes, Brett, it's Jamie, you better come in here. And so he'd call and he would just be like calling or check in like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, I'm just building some BMX jumps. And he's like, oh, that's awesome, man. Like anything you could do to stay behind a set of handlebars. Like you do that, kid.
That's cool.
So 2003 up until the date that Blair got hurt, I was on the Blair Morgan factory racing team, that entire duration. I was on there. It was myself, Willie Elam, Cajun Kunish,
Cooster, Earl Reimer too.
Earl Reimer, scrap iron, Earl Reimer. There was a full slate. Yeah. It started as me racing regionals, and then
Steve Martin in the mix there at one point.
No, he was always on Warner.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it started me racing regionals, and then I would come down. I'd race the odd national. I was in 04, 05.
What class did they sign you for originally?
Sport.
So you're a sport kid. Okay. So then from there went to semi-pro.
Yeah. So. Raced my way through the regional stuff in Canada, won some titles in Canada, kind of proved my worth, and then at 14 or 15, Jamie goes, okay, kid, it's nationals time. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. Show up to Duluth. You remember these days. There's 150 entries in Sport 440 or Sport Stock.
Yeah.
And there's 3 heats. So to break it down, there's heat 1, heat 2, heat 3. That gives you your points, and then they take the lowest amount of points to the front row of the final. At that point, if you didn't win every one of your heat, if you got second in one of those heats, you're in the LCQ.
You were in LCQ, yeah.
And maybe in the front row of the LCQ.
The LCQ is massive.
So I just botched it. My first national, just grenaded myself, cartwheeled my sled, and I'm like, oh man, this is tough. Like these nationals, these guys are fast. This is hard, Dad. Like. He's like, oh, you did good. We'll get the jitters out of the way. So the sled that we cartwheeled down the mountain, we drag it home in pieces. And, our race season didn't start until January. So we had him from November till January. And he actually built me a hand-built mod sled. That was my first ever mod sled. And at 14 years old, I had an 800cc twin full race motor. Like the motor came from Morgan Racing. And we did things different. We did it way different than what the factory teams were doing because we had access to Polaris parts.
Right.
We put a Polaris chain case in it, liquid cool brakes because I was always hard on brakes. I was terrified, dude. Those sleds are so fast. So I just squeeze the brake to slow down and not let off the gas. That's what my dad taught me to do. And so I have this factory sort of hand built mod. It's got Polaris clutch, Polaris chain case, Polaris this, it's dropped and rolled. So it's essentially a 128 with a 121 skid. This is all like pre sort of technology era.
Yeah.
And
so sorry, when you went back to Canada then after racing nationals in the US,
I raced pro.
So okay. So you went and ran a different class back in Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the definition line, dude. I show up and I can't qualify my way into sport
right
in the national scene in America. But I can go home and win all these pro races against
and
dudes.
Get seat time on a mod.
Yeah.
That helps you advance, and you're holding on to so much more power. There's so much more capable once you got that much power under you.
Yeah, and then I eventually became a mod kid.
Yeah,
I was just like
I feel you.
I was addicted to power. I hated riding my stalker. It felt slow.
Yeah,
I would practice on my stalker because I had to. But as soon as like the open class, I was like, it was just like flicking a switch and it was game on. I'm like, okay, I got this, because my dad built me a rocket ship. Like I would just get hole shots and take off and win these races. And so then the later part of that year, I got invited back to the national scene from Jamie, Lake Geneva. And that was the time when they were still doing the indoor snow crosses.
Yep.
So they put me on Cooster's factory race sled. But they don't run studs indoors. Instead, they run a 2-inch track. And Jamie's theory was, well, it's warm enough outside. There's not going to be any ice in the track. Let's leave the 2-inch track on it. And you could race completely no studs. And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like I kind of look up to what you guys do here. Like this could work out. It was the best time I've had on a factory mod sled, dude. Just like
tons of traction.
So much traction. Yeah. And, it felt light because the studs add weight, and it's all rotating mass. Yep. And so then the sled just felt like a bike under me. And I had my first like national podium then. It was me and was it Alex Ingolstad?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Him and I battled and, I got a second in Sport Open. I don't know what I did in stock. Probably crashed.
Isn't that nuts? There's a sport open class.
Insane.
Like,
it's nuts that they put 14-year-old kids.
Yeah. The fact that there were semi-pro 800 mods.
I look at that today, and that's the equivalent of taking a super mini kid out of motocross, 13-year-old kid that should be racing a 102, and putting him on a 450.
Right.
Like, it's just, man, it's not the same as what it once was. Now there isn't even mod sleds for pros.
It was so fun to watch because all those guys, their focus was, okay, if I do well here, I got a shot at getting a factory ride, sponsors, whatever. So they were going balls to the walls. And I remember seeing some of the gnarliest carnage I've ever seen in those like semi-pro open classes, sport open classes, because they were just like giving it all they had. And they were on sleds that I'd say 75% of them couldn't handle. And it was like you wanted to close your eyes sometimes. I'll never forget Duluth, and it was a Rev chassis, so it must have been sometime 06, 05 range. I was sitting at the finish line there, and it was a huge tabletop always.
Mm-hmm.
And you could
triple to the braking bump after.
Yeah. And one guy overshot and landed on the corner and just like exploded. Like side panels come off, everything. And we found out afterwards the throttle stuck, and he just held on off the lip. So he went over the finish line, 8 mod, dude. Just wicked, like, yeah, and never bailed. And he almost jumped into the ski run out there.
It's massive too. Like,
yeah,
I thought for a while there you were going to tell me a story about the time that I got knocked out doing the exact same thing at Duluth. But
oh, you did?
Yeah,
go trying to get double it or triple into the braking bump.
Yeah,
there?
So I got like second or third off of the start, and anyways, like you say, I was just. At that time, I was in semi-pro. I had something to prove. I was a name in the industry, and I should have been winning that race. And just backsided one of the rollers, smashed my face off the bars, knocked myself out, get drug into the ski shack, get checked out. Yeah, I know you should probably take the weekend off. And yeah,
I probably saw that.
Yeah, you probably were.
I didn't miss a Duluth for like 20 years or so.
So we'll take those moments. We'll fast forward a whole bunch. So for 2 years in a row, I got beat by Corey Davis in semi-pro open by 1 point. And I won't ever let that down, whether it comes to semi-pro championships or whips. Like Corey's got my number.
There's always a back and forth there. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. He's a great sport. And I loved racing against him, and we've had some great battles over the years. But fast forward 2008, it's my first pro year on the National Series. The XP had just gotten released. I was kind of struggling my way through the pro ranks, and, I had some good rides, and I could always qualify well, but it comes to the finals, and whether it was just nerves or, intimidation, right. I just couldn't really put it together. And, we go to X Games, and my sled's ripping, and I'm having a good time. I always loved going to X Games. I'd been there a couple years prior to 2008 as a semi-pro, and went through the qualifying phases, never really made it. My first year pro, I qualify, but none of the rest of the team did. And so now you're talking about having the weight of 2 semi-trailers.
Yeah, you got to send the
nobody
whole crew
else
out there.
Blair didn't qualify. Ian Hayden didn't qualify. Cooster didn't qualify. Willie didn't qualify.
So you got this whole production that's just on you.
So now, instead of me and my mechanic just doing our own thing, now we got like 8 mechanics, 1 snowmobile, 1 rider, and Blair running my pit board.
No pressure, huh?
And I qualify in on the front row and get a good start. And, I'm in third, and Tucker's just doing Tucker things, long gone.
Yeah.
He's probably already just stacking checks. And, I had Danny, DJ Ekstrom.
DJ Ekstrom, yeah.
Ekstrom was in front of me. And
he was a Duluth boy, I think.
Yeah. He was on Shoeing's team. So anyways, Blair's on the pit board, and every lap I come around, he's like kind of giving me the separation between me and Ekstrom, and I see it shrinking. And I remember before I lined up, my manager going, take your time to the halfway point. When you see the halfway flag, then start riding. Yeah. And, I get the halfway flag at 10 laps, and I see the gap between me and Ekstrom shrinking. And I just remember putting my head down and just charging so hard.
Well, then what a lot of people don't realize is X Games is at like 8,000 feet there.
Yeah, it's at 8,000 feet. Yeah. So, you're definitely working yourself and the sled. Yeah. I mean, the sled's starving for air too. I chase Ekstrom down, put a pass on him, and put myself into second with like 2 or 3 laps to go. Pull a little gap on him, And then I just come around, every lap I come around, Blair's just like clapping his hand against the board, like, keep it going. Like you're on one. Meanwhile, Tucker's like 25 seconds ahead of me, and so that was like my sort of breakout pro debut was at X Games, and my first ever X Games medal was a silver. And I tailed off the rest of that season with some good rides. I think I landed on the podium or close to the podium once or twice more. But I was just a mod kid, man.
But talk about a boost of motivation. You got, like you said, you got that whole team out there, semi-L's mechanics for one guy, and then you landed on the podium, which, I mean, Tucker, it was always just kind of racing for second. That was kind of the reality of it. So in a roundabout way, it's kind of a win.
Huge win. Dude.
So, I mean, that's just got to be like,
I remember being at
we came here for.
I remember being at the house afterwards, and Jamie, I keep referring to being the manager. It was the first year of freestyle, and he had seen Levi flip. Levi didn't qualify for the snowcross, but he made it in for freestyle, and he sees Levi flipping and stuff, and he like pulls me to the side. And this is like, I had kind of made a few YouTube videos at the time, and he had seen them, and he was like, I don't know, man, pulls me to the side. He's like, what do you think about that flip and shit? I'm like, I could do it, and he's like, good to know. And so then I'm like, okay, well, that was kind of weird. And so we finished the snowcross season, and he goes,
I'm putting this together here.
And he goes, you know what, man, like you did a really good job this season. Like, let's give you one of your practice sleds, and you go do your filming thing in the spring. Like, you deserved it. You earned it. And just go see what you could do with your snowmobile this spring. And that would have been the segment that you've seen would have been Slednex 11.
I remember you were on a Morgan racing sled.
I was on a Blair Morgan racing sled. Like, Slednex had flowed me some gear, and I was in.
Oh, really? That wasn't even like a deal yet.
No, they just like, let's get you in some gear, and we'll get you in the video, and see what you can do. And I believe opening shot of that segment is me just cartwheeling my brains out down a landing.
Yep.
And it goes from that into just like probably still to date one of my most favorite short track segments of all time.
Dude, so that was like some of the biggest hits I'd ever seen at that point. And the thing today is, I know this could be a whole discussion in itself. I know it gets you going and me, and you got to respect the hustle, but you were doing whips bigger than anybody almost to date. There's a few guys out there, like Kosterki's doing some huge stuff, some of the boys over in Sweden and everything.
Yeah, they're going for it.
But we're talking, this was 15 years ago almost.
2008, dude.
Yeah, and you're doing whips like that nobody really saw again until the social media era came around. If you weren't buying the DVDs, you weren't seeing that.
For sure.
And there was some massive hits in there. And going back to neutral. And by that, for people that don't know, I mean like landed on two skis, not any of this side panel stuff.
Yeah, it wasn't side panel stuff.
Which there's a time and place for it with the snow conditions, but
for
you were stomping stuff proper and had so much control of that machine. Well, that's why that segment stood out to me, dude.
And I can attribute that all back to my snowcross. You had to land the thing on the skis to keep going on the track.
Yeah, so, true.
I get into the hills, and we go into these riding zones, and it's just kind of like I'm kind of giving my chance. Like I'm a pro now. I just made a whole bunch of money at the X Games. I bought a big fancy truck, lifted it, deleted it, and I'm just blowing black smoke with my short track in the back. Like, you would have swore I was from Minnesota, dude.
Spent all your money.
Yeah, I lived in Whistler for a month, just filming and partying, and that was a good one. And there's things where I look back in there, like times with Corey Davis and times with Cody Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Cody and I were we were rivals in the BC snowcross circuit, and I kind of just like, when I left that's
BC, his background, huh?
Yeah.
I didn't realize
Cody
that.
was a pro snowcrosser in BC as well. And so, he's no slouch on a snowmobile either. And, for the first couple of seasons of filming, like, I'd always just bring him around because he was just so fun to be around. And, one of my most memorable hits in that segment is that huge quarter pipe air that we were doing. And we were actually like re-entering back into a landing. And,
that's the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah, him and I were sessioning that thing, and it's like, dude, it was so fun.
Oh, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah. So, the season comes to an end on filming, and, I'm working with Pascal, which is a longtime snowboard filmer, and he's taking us into like these old snowboard hits and showing them to Corey and I. And it's so wild because, at the time I was just like this kid in this big playground. Jump ahead. What is it now? It's 2022.
Mm-hmm.
I go back and I look at those jumps. They are still so massive. And there's jumps in there.
I still think that too, watching them.
There's jumps in there that I've done again and done tricks on, and just like I've landed and been so stoked. And then just like the memory clicks in, is like, you did that on a short track snowcross sled in like June. Like, yeah, good on you, Brett, for landing that one in the powder.
Yeah, it's real tough. Yeah. So then let's see, 509, I remember, was it volume 6? Somewhere around there?
It was early. I mean,
when you were wearing that, you were wearing aviators and a Sled Rising Sun sweatshirt, climbing some chutes.
Yep. That was, so I didn't have a snowcross ride that season, or I did. And then at the end of it, it got cut. And so I didn't have a sled to ride at home. So Tom's like, well, I'll just bring one up. You know,
this was from Tom.
Yeah, so he brings me up a
one and only 509 founder.
Yeah, so he brings me up with this like boosted M7 or something on it, you know, and
holy crap, I'm putting two and two together. I think that's his brother's sled. Does that sound right?
Yeah,
his brother still has it and rides it.
And that was like my big mountain debut, dude. I was like climbing chutes in the airport. I did the 90. I did the messy chute. I did camp out.
Yeah.
I didn't really jump. I did a couple jumps on it, but Crazy Canadian talked me up the monster chute, and that was kind of like my mountain, my sort of like big mountain breakout. But even in 509 films, it goes deeper than that. Like if we went all the way back, it starts in like, I'm gonna say like 03 or 04, like well before 509 films was even a thing. And
Diz was referencing.
Yeah, Diz referenced it before. And, I was kind of like doing the math on him. Like I don't want to like pump my own tires, but like I've been at this company, maybe the longest. Like Tom started it, and I was like, Tom brought me in at a very young age, and it wasn't even that it was Tom contacting me. Like he through a buddy of his that had an uncle,
right?
It's like one of those deals. And it was like, hey man, like these guys are filming, and Joe Parsons was a part of it too. And we went and rode some hills out in Yakima and built some cheese wedges. And that kind of like started my whole passion for the film side of it. And so, each spring I just look forward to getting out into the hills and riding with cameras. It's
been a cool ride. Even for myself watching you. I mean, since I've been here, let's see, I've been full-time 6 years, and then I did some subcontract work for 2 before that. So like 8 now already, which is insane to think.
Pretty wild.
Going closer to a decade than not. And like your signature goggle every year. You've had a signature goggle now since, oh boy.
We got to be on our 4th year, I think, right now.
It came out with the original Kingpin, maybe, which was in 17.
Yeah.
So just seeing the evolution of that, and like, you being the longest running, you are the longest running 509 athlete, and watching your signature goggle and the success with it, and then seeing the design input and watching design team come up with new stuff. Like, what a ride. Because at first, when I knew that Brett had a goggle, I was still like fanboy.
Yeah.
I'm like, I get to talk about I get to talk about goggles with Brett.
Totally.
And now it's the other way around. I'm like, oh, I'm super stoked to show Brett this goggle.
I can't wait
more
to show
so than you
tech.
are to see it, I feel like. I'm like, this thing's sick. I can't wait to show this to Brett.
And that goes back deep. I mean, when 509 first started, it was just like a clear lens or like a tinted lens and a black frame. At one point, Joe Parsons had a signature goggle, and it was all black, and it had a white JP on the back.
It was the Aviator.
It was an Aviator. Yeah. And at that point in my career, I'm like, oh, I want to like splash some color around a little bit. And so I went and bought nail polish from Claire's, and I would order a stack of Joe Parsons signature goggles, and I would Sharpie out the JP on the back of the strap, and I would take whatever color that I wanted my frames to be, and I would fingernail polish my frames. And then
seriously?
Yeah. And then I would I had like an orange pair, and then
do you have some
like
of those still?
50-50 pair. I bet you if I dug deep, I could find them.
Oh man, I'm going to do a throwback Thursday post on that.
And so anyways, I like started creating my own colorways, and then I would like send pictures into design and be like, you guys like have a look at this. And then, a few years down the road, all of a sudden now there's just like this mass colorway, and they're like, oh, okay, maybe there is some value in having some athletes that have some creativity.
Dang. I would love if you could dig one of those up. That would be a hilarious Like,
yeah, old school aviator. And like, just like I would paint the tabs and I would actually take the lens off and paint everywhere else that would be visible on the goggle. And, that was like my own sort of like little sense of creativity where I could have something that nobody else did. And that kind of leads into having these signature series is like, you guys come out with the goggle tech and then you give me the freedom to, pick what lens I want, pick what frame colors or what.
Sometimes we forget.
Yeah.
It gets a little crazy here.
And like I go back and forth on it. Some years I keep it simple and I want to keep it to a broad audience when, we'll do the grays and we'll do the reds. And then, there's been years where I do the vibrant thing and, like in the coming years, there's, some color changes happening again. And so it's really fun to be a part of all that.
The tough part is every time you come here, you actually get to see things in person. And it totally resets your mind. Like last time you saw your goggle and then you saw this other lens, because it's one thing looking at photos I text you or online, and then you see this lens in person and you're like, oh, damn, I should have done that. I had
that one. Remember I was here when I was coming down for Jackson and I was like, that lens is insane. That's got to go in my goggle. We went to design. They're like, you missed the cutoff by about a week.
That's what's fun about coming down though. So moral of that story is you should try to come down a month earlier than that next year so you can see it in person and have time to make changes.
I like it.
Yeah, it's been fun. I really want to know when you were talking about the snowcross days and your manager going, do you think you can do that? The flip? Mm-hmm. The first flip, because there was foam pits for sure. I think that time it was mainly like big in the moto world, probably more so than anything. There was no snow specific ones. I mean, Frisbee burned one to the ground.
Yep.
And you being you, did you practice on like BMX or moto, or did you have foam pit access?
So here's
that's
how
a tough thing to
here's how the whole process started. So I had that conversation with Jamie, and Levi had won freestyle gold that year, and him and I battled on the snowcross track. I knew that he wasn't much better than I was, like we obviously both were blessed with skills with snowmobiles, but he figured out, I think they Red Bull had some access to some training equipment for him. So that spring, Corey Davis and I, when I talk about living in Whistler for a month, whenever we had down days or rain days, we would go to the Air Dome, which was like the indoor bike park. And they had a foam pit in there and you could rent hardtail mountain bikes for like $25 for the day. Yeah. So Corey and I would just go in there and huck our meat, and we would just go and figure it out. Like we went and figured out flips on a mountain bike first.
Right.
And, started nailing those. And then that, through that summer, I flipped mountain bikes on some of the biggest jumps in Kamloops,
right.
And so I got comfortable being upside down. And then it wasn't until like 2 years later, in the fall, I flipped a dirt bike with Foster to the mulch pit and did that with like no foam pit. It was a shaped of a landing, super kicker at 35 feet. And he goes, just hit it in second gear, lean back. I'm like, yeah, easy enough, man. Like just watched him do it a whole bunch of times. And so then I went and did that. And I was like, whoa, like this flipping stuff's pretty sweet.
Opened up a whole new world.
It's like, it's just handlebars and they're just going over your head for a second. Then they come underneath you and you land.
Right. Okay.
And so then this happens. And, to loop back even before then, 2006, the year that Turn Again lost all of their footage. Yeah. I was in Alaska with Davis, and, Dane was doing, people are calling them 270s or under flips now. At the time he was calling them like the squirrel flip or like the Christoph.
He was flipping everything.
And so then, I'm hitting this sort of re-entry lip thing, like how you're talking about how I can get the sled upside down and land it back on the skis. Right. And, Dane's like, that's pretty cool, man. But like, if you just pulled like over the back of your head, held it pinned and then spotted the landing, just like how you did right there, it's like, you'll do a flip too. And so I did one first try.
So your first one was in AK.
Yeah. In AK on a shorty, 600 mod sled, still had the studs in it. There's another story to go with that. So I land this flip. It's like high fives and everything everywhere. And we go down and that day's done. And we go Turn Again. We go to 110, which is like the big, the iconic jump, you know, and Corey and I are there early. It's kind of gray out. We're just going to kind of go and dig. And he's like, I got to show you this jump. We should hit it a couple times and then we'll start digging. And so we do, and then we start getting really comfortable, and then Corey and I just naturally get into a whip off. And I land sideways, dude, and I land sideways and I high side myself, and the sled flips over. And as the sled flips over, the snow pinches the throttle wide open. And I flip over the sled and grab the inside of my thigh on one of the studs and just rip myself a gash like this long, like, you know, about this wide, right to the meat. Like it was just like gristle meat. And, you know, back to the trucks we go, and there's like a military dude there, and he looks at my leg and he's like, yeah, you might want to get that stitched up. And I'm like, I don't have insurance. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm 16 or 17 years old at the time. I'm freaking out. And Corey's like, well, let's just go to True Value there. We'll get some super glue. Let's
go to the hardware store.
Yeah, let's go to the hardware
solution.
store. And, you know, we drive 2 hours back to his place, and we grabbed some super glue, and we pinched my leg back together, glued it, and then like butterfly bandaged it. And I continued to ride for the rest of the week like that.
You got back on the sled.
Oh yeah, dude. I was in Alaska, man. Wild times being a kid, dude. So,
I do not recommend that as a solution for any of you listeners.
No. It was like
live and learn.
I remember it like stinging so bad, and this is before I even like thought that alcohol was the thing, or like, you know, like
right.
And I'm like, no, I just did it. And so, yeah, that was my first flip, and then my first backcountry flip, I'm gonna say, is 2014 or 2015 on a snowmobile, no foam pit, just a solid shovel crew.
Was there any footage of the first flip at AK?
Yeah, there was, but Turnigan lost.
It was that. Okay.
It was the year that they lost the hard drive, and really unfortunate. We had some insane days on the snow then. That just like, those are just memories, you know. But maybe that was meant to be. Maybe that was just a thing where it was just like, no, it's just time for you to go and enjoy the moment.
Yeah. A little fuel to the fire too, to do it again.
Yeah.
Have somebody capture it.
And so in 15 was my first snow to snow flip on a sled.
That wasn't that long ago.
15 or 14. I think 14 maybe.
I mean, still in the grand scheme of things,
it was still a while
of
ago.
What you flipped now, it really wasn't that long ago.
And it was on a short track. Arctic at the time made like a race replica.
Mm-hmm, that was ours.
Yeah, so I had an 800, and I did a full Speedworks kit in it, and I just I built that sled intentionally for flipping.
Sick.
Yeah, and went into the backcountry in Whistler, and had KJ Johansson with me, and Derek Wood, a bunch of other dudes that were like on the come up. You know, we were having a big day, and weather was right, and Nikki was in the village with her kids, and she knew that I had intended to flip that day. And so then we're up there, right? We're flipping, we're out of cell service, we're out of cell range. We're doing our thing. I land my flip, and it's all high fives, and you hear, and you're like, start looking overhead, and there's a helicopter coming. That's kind of strange. And so then we didn't really like ever think anything of it. And then we get into cell service on the ride out, and I just like pull my phone out to do a check-in, and it's just loaded with messages like, are you okay? There's a heli coming. SOS. Are you okay? Are you okay? Brett, like, tell me you're fine. So at the time, InReach was just making its way into Canada.
Oh, no, I know what you did.
You've heard these accidental like button presses, right? I whipped my backpack off, and I threw it into the snow, and whatever was in my bag or something like bumped the SOS. Like minutes before I even went and did my first flip. But, you know, for whatever reason, the heli didn't come and land near us. There just wasn't like, you know, a landing area or something. But yeah, that was like super trippy. And so I get on my phone. I'm like, no, like I'm fine. Like, why? What's up? And she's like, oh, like your SOS trip. Like we had to send a heli up, like search and rescue's on their way.
Poor Nikki. Oh my gosh. She already knows what you're going out there to do.
Yeah. And so like, you know, instantly just starts thinking the worst. But that was the start of what, you know, is to what people are seeing now is sort of like the freestyle or the, you know, the backcountry Brett Turcotte is, you know, that was basically, if I had to go back and look at a moment, that's where it would have been.
I've watched a lot of footage of you flipping, whether I'm editing stuff. I mean, I did 5 films with your segments and cutting them together and all that. So this is such a, I don't know if this makes any sense actually. I've chatted with you about this, but I've watched it in so much real time, slow-mo, over and over, editing something to a song, that I understand the physics of a flip.
Yeah.
I have no need to do one, but there's this weird little thing in the back of my head that tells me, like, I think I could do it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I've watched your form. I've watched everything. I've watched your head tucks. I've watched how you preload, your body position. I've hundreds of times probably over the years.
It's a disclaimer, but it's the easiest hard trick to do.
Mental game, 100%. Huh?
Maybe the other way around.
Yeah,
maybe it's the hardest easy trick to do.
Right. And then you did that YouTube video with a couple buddies that went to go flip, and it was kind of the same conversation you and I had. And I'm like, dude, I get it. And I don't even jump, and I still feel like I could do it just because.
For sure.
It's all there. I understand all the mechanics of it.
It's just science and math, really.
Yeah. And fighting your,
and I suck at math,
your head.
Dude.
Yeah, me too.
I passed on 51s in school. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things too. Like I've done it so many times that it's just kind of like second nature. Even on this trip right now, I'm going down to go ride one of the biggest free ride motocross events in North America. Mm-hmm. Haven't hit a ramp all year, haven't flipped a bike, but I'm going to go there and I'm going to flip and I'm going to have a good time, but it's one of those things where I just have it so figured out in my head, but I still trip on it. And even when we're at these freestyle shows on whether it's dirt bikes or snowmobiles or Surons, like I'm still getting those first jump jitters. I'm still getting those, like the little bit of self-doubt. Like, do I actually remember how to do this? Like, do I need to pull a video up on my phone and look and see how fast I went? Or like,
do you think that's better though? That kind of keeps you in line. I feel like if you get too comfortable with
complacent, if you get complacent, for sure that's when mistakes happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things where you have to respect the things that we're doing, whether it's to an airbag or to foam pit or to snow. Like, I mean, flipping and the whole freestyle world is constantly changing. I feel like I'm always trying to keep up.
Yeah.
And trying to stay ahead of that curve is it's a challenge. And I mean, X Games hasn't had snowmobile motorsports at it in the last couple of years. And I look back at it now and I'm like, man, that was a grind. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of stress. And I nearly killed myself multiple times, but I did it, and people ask me all the time, like, well, if X Games doesn't come back, what are you going to do? I'm going to teach people how to have fun on snowmobiles, and I'm going to go out into the backcountry and enjoy snowmobiling again, outside of contests or competitions. I can like pat myself on the back and pat, everybody in my corner, give them all hugs and be like, we did it, this, that was it. That was our time,
You definitely got the hardware to prove it too.
Yeah. 8 of them now, dude. And
I got to wear one once. It was I felt good. I felt real good.
Yeah, they're definitely like badges of honor. Like they hang on the wall. I look at them. I walk by them every day, and I'm like, that's pretty cool. You know? Did it propel my life into anything like out of this, sort of realm? No, I'm still just a dude. I still wake up and I make lunches with the kids, and I have a construction business, and I go to jobs, and I still do it. That's just kind of the persona of who I am, though, is like, it's always been work,
That's what I've always admired about you, is you've always taken the time to chat with a fan, a kid, whatever, because like you just said, we're all human, right? So many people, like, I'll put you on a pedestal for sure. You've done some gnarly stuff, but the fact that you stayed humble along with that and realize everything you talked about, an hour ago, you're talking about being that kid walking around into Blair Morgan's race shop.
100%.
That kid meeting you was you doing the exact same thing, 20 years ago.
For sure, dude. And that's what people need to understand, is like, when I put my helmet on, I do flip the switch. I am another person in that helmet. Like there's time and a place for everything. And when I have my helmet on, it's time to work, and it's time to, it's time to be who I'm supposed to be. But when that helmet's off and I have the time to interact, and I love that. I mean, being a dad and a husband and having responsibility, but also being able to kind of play the other side of the fence, of being the fun guy too. Like, those kids need that. Those kids need clinics. They need the Chris Brandts. They need the Sane Skinners. They need Muskoka Freerider. Right. this whole YouTube
it's a whole
world,
new generation of potential.
We talk about playing catch up. Here I am 2 years behind on YouTube, trying to like make a name on YouTube. I'm nobody. You put me on X Games and everybody knows.
Right.
And so it's cool. It's a new challenge for me. It's something that, that I'm really interested in. And it also like, it helps me engage. It helps me keep grounded, and it really is about the future of the sport. It's not, if I was to tell you right now that something that I'm going to do with my snowmobile, whether it's in this year or 5 years from now, is going to change your life, you'd be like, yeah, I don't know, dude. But all it takes is like one minuscule second or 5 seconds of my time to like high five a kid. And all of a sudden he's going back and he's telling his friends like, hey man, like I got to meet that guy. Like, the guy that we see on YouTube, I got to meet that guy. Like, the guy that we see on X Games.
You're looking at a product of that.
But that's it, dude. Like, and I don't do it for, I don't need the recognition from it, but I do it from my heart because that's the sport that I grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important. And I'm seeing it now, like the whole backcountry snowmobiling or the whole snowmobiling sport is starting to broaden. It's not just like dads going shack to shack with sausages and beers. It's like, it's moms and dads.
It's becoming a family affair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's what's really cool. And Hudson at 6 is riding and Ezra at 11 is riding. I took Tessa, she's 13. I put her on an 850 this spring, her first time ever. And she's like, oh my goodness, Dad, like this is so cool.
He's ripping.
Yeah.
Ripping.
And, and so that's what it's really all about. Like the lights and the stars and the medals and everything, like that's just like, that's bonus for me at this point.
If X ever did come back, do you think that chapter's closed or would you want another shot at it?
I'd go there.
Yeah.
I'd be going there for blood too.
Yeah.
Like I say it now, like, I'm pretty chill, pretty relaxed. Like
you said that once the helmet's on, it's business.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, once the helmet's on, the goggles on, it's business. And that's the way that I've always treated it. And with Nikki's help, like she's been the one that just allowed me to focus on my riding so much. And she would take care of the back end, and making sure that sponsors were happy. And even now, like you say, you can kind of like get a 360 view of like the Turcottes. It's not Brett Turcotte anymore. It's like, what's Brett doing with Hudson, or what's Brett doing with Ezra? Or like, what are Brett and Nikki doing in the backyard? And there's times where like, I'm just so busy that I couldn't be bothered by my phone, but she's got my back. She's grabbing clips and she's like posting and tagging. And then when I have a minute, I can go in and reshare and like kind of do my job. But it's been a team effort on that end for a very long time.
Yeah. You guys are my favorite action sports families to follow. Outside of like, man, I can't even find a good example. There's not really a ton that you see the family getting involved. Pastrana quite a bit. I mean,
Pastrana
actually the blocks have been fun to watch too.
That.
The block family, they're all doing stuff together all the time. And now they're all racing together. But that's just inspiring for the next generation because there's so many young kids on social media now that might not know exactly what you did 10 years ago, but they've seen what you've been doing in the last 10 months.
That's right.
And then they see that, oh, you got a couple kids that are near my age that are actively getting into this also. And like, oh, I should try to do this. I can do this. Why can't I get, my dad to help me out and, go to work and mow some lawns all summer long and get a snowmobile.
Right.
It's cool to see the whole entire family coming together and promoting not just snowmobiling. Like you said, a little bit of everything. You guys are just you guys are all...
we do it all, man.
Yeah, you guys are all adrenaline junkies at the end of the day.
It's like, it's mountain bikes, it's electric dirt bikes, it's, it's fishing, it's hunting, it's traveling. And we try and keep busy for sure. Now we've got this new house with a track in the yard and it's like, it seems kind of surreal that that's something that we can do. But now, I'm out there doing track prep, not for me. Like I get to ride the track once Ezra's chewed it all up and got some ruts and stuff in it. But, same with Hudson, this week she started clearing one of the doubles on the track, but she started jumping it so far that I had to go and make the jump bigger, last night, like hours before it was time to go to bed. I'm out, working on the track so that when we come back, it's prepped. So
that's so awesome.
Yeah. Pretty fun.
Backing up to X again, one last thing. Was the double flip ever a thought?
It was there.
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I
I bet.
If I didn't think that it was, double flip's still there. And I don't think that it needs a ramp. So there's been some things on my list for sure. There was 2 years ago in the Alpine sled style contest, I created a list and I checked off most of the things on the list. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised that you see it happen on snow, whether it's me or a buddy or, somebody that really wants it. But, I don't think that it needs to just be an X Games trick.
Right.
Holy shit. If you were gnarly.
That was a gnarly sentence right there. I'm just picturing the logistics of that.
Front flip again or double flip first try, I'd probably start leaning towards double flip. I know how to flip once.
Right.
You just got to hang on and keep it pinned for the second one.
Yeah, just bigger jump.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, there's been some serious tries. Bodine landed it on his own ramp.
In Sweden,
yeah. A week or two before X Games is almost kind of a middle finger to them for not letting him bring his own ramp to the event. So he released a video project, which is like good on him, man. Like he owns that. Nobody's ever going to be able to take that away from him.
Yeah.
Same way with me with the snow bike flip. I went and flipped a full size snow bike in the backcountry snow to snow.
Volume 11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was for me. That wasn't for X Games. That wasn't for, I didn't get anything out of that other than I got to stamp my name in the history books and saying that I was the first one to flip a snow bike.
And I want to emphasize that a full size kit. That wasn't some chopped thing for X Games. That was you could go to the dealer and buy that.
It was a 121 Yeti mounted onto a bone stock KX 450. It didn't even have a thermostat, dude.
Gnarly.
It was just like my freestyle motocross bike that I slapped a kit on, put a Pro Circuit exhaust on it, and went to the hills.
So sick.
I remember I call Foster up and I'm begging him. And I'm like, dude, I need your help. I want you to come out to the hills and be a part of this with me. Like, it's going to be a good time. And he's like, man, I hate the cold. And I'm like, well, I'll get you some winter gear and we'll get you up there. And we got him up there and it was like the worst winter conditions, like mid-February.
It's all socked in.
Snowing, socked in. We built what we thought was going to be a good enough lip and I flopped onto my face about 4 times. And then by the end of the day, just before dark, actually, I'm like, let's just build a quarter pipe. Let's build a spine. And so we built this like 14-foot tall, massive, steep lip. It was almost oververt at the top of it. And I just hit it as fast as I could possibly go and got it to come around. And I remember seeing one of my previous bomb holes and just like tucking the bars into my chest and dropping the ski into that bomb hole. And if that bomb hole wasn't there, I might not have even rotated it. Like it was that.
It gave you that little bit more.
Just that little bit extra that I needed.
Yeah. As you described that, I can picture that from the film. And I just remember Rev Bomb. Bringing that thing around. Just,
that poor bike, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's still a GoPro floating around out in the snow from that day that I lost.
A little whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the ones where it was like, that was for me, Yeah. And then now, like you say, X Games being out of the picture is like, where do you go? What's next for you? And I did the snow to snow kiss of death backflip. Mm-hmm. I did the snow to snow seat grab backflip. I did the nose press off of a cliff.
So sick.
Those were all just like check marks for myself. Like I'm a fighter. There's no way about, no other way of looking at that. Is like, I want to do stuff that challenges me. And if I'm not challenging myself, I kind of feel like I'm like kind of shortchanging myself,
Yeah.
Even, X Games medals, we talk about these medals. My last X Games gold medal. Yeah, it's a gold medal, but is it the one that I'm the most proud of? Absolutely not. Like that was just a survival. And I at that moment, at that time of night, I was the best one to hit the ramp, but I kind of left that one like,
you had more in the tank.
There was more there,
right.
but we were dealing with a setup that wasn't what we were used to training on. And so there was just so many variables that nobody knows about and that nobody, really needs to know about, other than the jump that we were riding wasn't the one that we were told we were going to get. And we all just kind of had to go back to the drawing board and kind of take it back to the 90s.
It's a good mentality to have, though. It's progressive, constantly. I think you subconsciously are pushing yourself too.
For sure.
You're not even realizing it. The fact that you ride at the level you ride at, which is, I mean, tenfold of what your average Joe would ever dream of, and it's still not enough in the back of your mind, is the reason you're continuously coming up with these new things, doing the nose press, the nollie off the cliff, all of that, those little things. Those goals to you might seem kind of like, oh, we could do this to make it that much cooler.
Well, here's the perfect example, dude. I look back at that clip. I was just posting one on my Instagram a little while ago of nose press, and I'm like, I'm going to go back and I'm going to take the ski rubbers out of my skis so I can get more lift out of the back. Because when I want to go off of the cliff, I want to take my hands off and do a suicide no-hander. Like, that's just the mentality that I'm in, dude. And so I think that's why X Games for me was such an easy thing to get into. It's like, it was just a constant progression.
Right.
Enough about steel ramps and snow landings, dude. I want to talk about trees. Trees and boosts and like high-powered mod sleds and climbing Jackson.
You've done a little bit of everything in the last couple of years here. You got a OEM deal with Polaris, which was sick.
Amazing, dude. I was due for a change, and Polaris is kind of, you know, I had the right connections with some dealerships, and we made some calls, and we made it work, and now here we are. You know, it's kind of 100% full circle now.
Yeah.
Started as a little kid on a Polaris at a Polaris dealership with my dad, and now, you know, he's asking me for a deal on a belt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's ironic, huh? Yeah, and then you get in with Polaris, and you get a couple seasons in, and then all of a sudden you get a whole new chassis change. You're getting factory boost. You're able to kind of go back to your roots of riding in the trees, getting out there and enjoying BC for its epic backcountry.
It's such a blessing, man. And I'm riding terrain now on snowmobiles that I would drive by as a kid, and had no idea that you could even put a snowmobile in there. And now I'm like putting my snowmobile in there and telling the group that I'm with, like, just stay within my eyesight and I'll make sure that we get where we got to go.
Yeah.
You know? And, it's been really cool to, you know, take the learning curve of the X Games stuff and then start dumping it into what now is, you know, like I call it like all mountain. Is like, I don't know when I leave the truck in the morning if I'm going to go and ride trees, if I'm going to go hit jumps, if I'm going to do whips or cliffs or drops. You know, like, I have the chance, and I have the chance to leave the truck in the morning with a blank mind and just let things unfold in front of me as they come to me.
Right.
You know, and that's the cool part about being where I am in BC is, like, on any given day, you could do any one of those things or a multiple of.
Yeah. And then now you've gotten to this point that you've got a little bit of every discipline of snowmobiling in your back pocket, right? Racing Jackson, doing freestyle, doing snowcross, doing big mountain riding, trees, everything. And then I see you all of a sudden are like, dude, I'm going to start doing some clinics. And when I saw that, I was hyped. I was like, a Turcotte clinic? Because, like, there's a lot of guys, you know, Shane, Dan, Chris, that focus on technical tree riding.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Brett's got way more than technical tree riding in his back pocket. And so you open yourself up for clinics, but you don't have to follow the industry standard. Like, you can be like, all right, let's do a jump clinic. Let's do a drops clinic. Like, your insight, your knowledge, your expertise, your experience, people are going to not even bat an eye at that. They're going to be like, I want to learn how to do that, Brett is the guy.
100%. And that's where I was given a chance to pivot. You know, I'm like, do I retire from X Games and just step out of snowmobiling, or do I retire, you know, not retire, sorry, but if I take X Games out of my life, what do I replace it with? What do I put my energy into? Now I'm putting it into other people's riding abilities. You know, I'm taking what we just talked about for over an hour, and I'm putting that, you know, that's 20 plus years of riding experience. I'm putting that into people's laps, you know, and like you say, like, I can do jumping, I could do dropping, I could do technical tree riding. I could keep it as simple as, like, here's how you get a sled up on its edge on the flat ground.
Yeah.
That being said, I had an intermediate clinic this year that was doing cliff drops in Turtle, like sending it, you know? And so that's the cool part about these clinics is, I label them beginner, intermediate, advanced, but they're so well-rounded and so moldable that I'll take the entire group. We'll have a sit down the night before and we'll talk about safety and, we'll talk about snow and we'll do all the sort of schooly stuff. that Saturday is kind of like assessment day. So we'll go out onto the snow. We'll get the entire group into a spot where I feel safe. And we'll just start with some small, some small technical maneuvers. And then I can get a good read on what the group is like. And then on Sunday, we start, on Sunday is like the work day. So Saturday night, everybody's tired. I feed them, we give them food at Stoked Mountain Adventures, and we fill the shop up, and we put Supercross on the TV, and we're making bets on Supercross. And these people don't know for the hell that they're in for on Sunday. And, I'm having a good time with it, and everybody else around me is having a good time. And I think that that's what's going to keep bringing people back, is they're learning, but not in such a way that it feels like work the entire time.
Right.
And, for me, I get so much satisfaction out of just like the simplest things. Like even my wife, Nikki, I mean, we've been together for coming on 10 years now. And, when I first met her, she'd snowmobiled, but I wouldn't call her a snowmobiler. Now, like, she comes out onto the hills with me, and she takes part of these clinics because she's one of my safety coordinators. So she gets to take part in these clinics, and like I got her riding on, maintaining edge and going across terrain and in and out of trees now, like all in like maybe 2 or 3 clinics last year that we did together.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
See, and it's the little wins.
For sure.
Sane talked about it. Well said. He said, don't snowmobiling. There's no timeline on it when we're out there riding.
Yeah.
It's taking those little wins and realizing when you're tired and reflect that, hey, I just did this,
For sure.
and not getting ahead of yourself 10 steps. And Nikki there, taking her time, taking those wins, all of a sudden now she's ripping with you.
Well, and she's competitive. And so she'll see like other girls in the group, or she'll see guys in her group that are similar level. And if they go and get something done successfully, she's like, I could do that.
I can figure that out. Yeah.
And then there's, these advanced clinics where I just get to drag these guys through a ringer for 2 days. And it's like, it's hard to say which one I get more satisfaction out of. The beginner one is nice because you can actually measure the success. You can see where they start and where they end. And I love getting the messages midway through the season, like, oh, that thing that we worked on Saturday at 12 o'clock, just after lunch,
Yeah.
I get that a lot. So those, I get a lot of takeaway from those, and I get lots of positive feedback. And then the intermediate ones is like, I don't know what to expect on those ones. 'Cause you get a guy that comes in that's like maybe getting 10% off on a can, and he's like, he's got a wrap on his sled, and he's like, he's the best in his group.
Right.
But then I can go humble him in like the flick of a switch.
Yeah,
and then he's like, oh,
I love that.
And so the intermediate ones are maybe the most challenging for me to really wrap my head around what needs to get accomplished. But we're all out there in a group, and the way that I explain it in my morning meeting is like, we're all going to leave here together today in one piece, and we're all going to come back in one piece. Check your ego at the door, because I will, like I say, I will humble you the minute that you try and, the minute that you start to show a little bit of cockiness, I'll be like, no, dude. And
that's when things go south real quick.
Yeah. But people respect that.
Mm-hmm.
People understand, and I make it well known in my meeting, like, your time is my time. And if I have to go and chase you because you went and got stuck doing something that we're not instructing on, you're actually taking time away from the 9 other people that are here to learn.
Right.
And so then that's not fair. And then all of a sudden, you just got all these squirrels everywhere, and
Get that mob mentality.
Yeah.
One person sees it happen, and they go off. And,
for sure. Yeah. So that's the one thing that I really focus on in my safety meetings and out on the course. Like, we leave here as a group, we go out on the hill as a group, we come back as a group. And I want the entire group to have something positive to take away from this, not just like Joe and Mike and right. These guys. So, it's really fun to start all the way at the beginner stage and go all the way through to the advanced, and just go and have like 2 full shred days with these guys where they're so beat, I'm beat.
Not only that, but you're in like the mecca of backcountry snowmobiling.
Yeah.
To do this. I mean, you're going out of Revelstoke, which is...
Yeah, luckily Carter over at Stoked Mountain Adventures in Revy, he's got, an insane setup for hosting and
beautiful
with the riding around there, and just everything. It's the perfect recipe. it gets me away from my house. So I'm not operating it out of my house.
Yeah.
You know, I get to,
home is still home.
Yeah. I get
to separate business.
Yeah. I get to separate business from home. You know, I've got a great relationship with Stoke Mountain Adventures and with Great Canadian Snowmobile Tours, Revel Stoke Snowmobile Club, like all these collaborations to make this one thing happen. And, you know, it's like, it's kind of an honor to be able to do it, to be honest. Like, I don't have to go and do those things, but I get to go and do those things.
Well said.
You know, and that's the part that I love. And just being able to see people get better at riding snowmobiles, but also like you can see them grow as people too, which is, it's really interesting to see. You know, when people start getting frustrated and down, you kind of like bring them some water and sit them down. Like, listen, dude, like this is actually very tough. Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Like that line that you just did right there.
Like I said, take that little win.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so being able to just, you know, I've never really been a people's person, but I'm also growing as a person and understanding that, hey, this is like my time to be a people person and to help, you know, help. If somebody came to me and was like, hey man, I'm going to make you a professional rally car driver, I'd be like, sick, sign me up. I guarantee that I can't even get the car out of the pits, you know? So that's like the perfect analogy. It's like, you know, I would pay thousands of dollars to go to Dirtfish to learn how to drive a rally car properly. Is that going to make me a professional? Maybe not. But is it going to make me want to come back and try again? 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's just everything that comes out of that. Even, I've shadowed a bunch of Sane's clinics over the years, Dan's clinics, and the friendships that are born if you're overlapping with groups from all over the country, all over the world, whatever, you might leave that with 3 new contacts in your phone of guys you want to ride with. And know they got the proper training. They went in the same clinic. They have the same mentality on what to improve on. So you already have that common bond of like, we're willing to learn. We know our skill sets. Like, dude, text me next time you're in the area. Like there's so much that you can get from doing something like what you're doing right now. And, you know, you could create lifelong friendships out of just going to a respectable and reputable clinic and learning some stuff with like-minded individuals.
Totally. And I see it amongst the group most. Like I oversee everything that's going on, but I'm seeing like, oh, you live here and, you know, I live there. Like, oh, it'd be awesome. Like, let's get each other's numbers and let's meet up after this and let's go ride. And then I get tagged in social media of these guys riding and doing stuff. And I'm like, oh, dude, like I'm actually bringing people together. And it's like, that's a cool feeling. And, you know, my goal for the clinics thing and, you know, trying to share my knowledge is I'm trying to make snowmobiling not intimidating. I'm trying to make it as safe as possible, but also allow people to progress at a rate that is sort of controlled.
Yeah.
You know, it's a gnarly sport and you're, you know, kilometers, like multiple kilometers or miles away from any truck or any amenities or any emergency services. And so to me, it's important as a dad and, you know, as a husband and like I've got responsibilities. I know that when I leave the truck, I've got the Zoleo and I've got, you know, fire starting equipment and, you know, I've got all of these things. But for a dude that's just starting out snowmobiling, a lot of that stuff gets overlooked. And it's like, but if you're given the chance to go into a clinic and I open my backpack up and show you all the pieces that I carry, the light bulb goes on and then they go into the retail store over at Stoked and they get the Mountain Labs headlamp and they get the saw and they, you know, it's not as simple as just like buying a snowmobile and going to the mountain.
Right. And
I've been at the dealership at Outlaw and Kamloops and, you know, in discussions with them and, you know, perfect example. I had a customer, oh, I just got a new 850. What can should I get? And I'm like, well, how old's your Beacon? Beacon? What's Beacon? I'm like, come inside. Yeah. You know, so we go downstairs and the $1,000 that he was going to spend on a shiny new can that just makes a bunch of noise is actually getting reinvested back into his own personal life because now he's got a beacon, a shovel, a probe, and a backpack. Yep. He's going to go home and show his wife all the safety equipment that he's got. And she can rest assured sleep that night that when he goes sledding the next day, he's got the basic essentials to go snowmobiling. And for me, it's like, you don't go into a Lamborghini dealership and buy a car without a driver's license.
Right.
You know? And
Good analogy. Good analogy.
Yeah. And like, they're not selling you that car without a driver's license.
Yeah.
And I'm like one person at a time, I guess, kind of showing these people like, sick. You bought a new sled, but do you have this, and this? And like,
do you have the proper equipment to get you home from riding that new sled safely? And your friends. That's another thing.
Because they are kind of like snow Lambos. Like they're high performance machines that can put people in massive amounts of danger in a matter of seconds.
Oh yeah. We're riding things that do 0 to 60 faster than a lot of supercars.
Yeah.
And we're just deep in the backcountry of no cell service. Like it's just another day.
Totally.
Yeah. But, well, Brett, I could talk to you for like 3 hours.
This is going to need to be like a multi-episode. Every time I come through town, I'm back in August.
Okay, we're going to do part 2 then, because I mean, we could talk for 3 hours, but the family we keep talking about is standing right outside here, and you are headed to Oregon to go flip your bike because you're
to go ride the Big Hill Jam, dude. So professional snowmobiler gets invited to this massive free ride dirt bike event. I'm kind of a little nervous. But
multidiscipline madman.
Totally.
But for the record, you heard it here first. There is potential little rumor. I don't want to start a rumor, but there was a little talk of a double flip, maybe. Just a maybe. Throwing that out there. The discussion was had.
The thought is still in the head, man.
But if you guys aren't already following Brett, it's Turcotte 16
at Turcotte 16 on Instagram. Brett Turcotte 16 on YouTube. Go to brettturcotte.com/shop. Get yourself a Turcotte t-shirt. Support me. Support my my lifestyle and my brand. And I'm gonna lead this one out with a dad joke for you.
Oh, I'm ready.
You didn't think you were gonna get out of here without a dad joke.
I'm ready.
Okay, this one could. Okay. Why don't chickens wear pants?
Why?
Because they're peckers on their heads.
Oh. If you guys aren't already subscribed, if you're watching on YouTube, I appreciate it. We're really enjoying the YouTube side. It's a lot of work, and we think this place looks pretty rad. We are now having, we finally got everything set up on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify listening, you can watch this as well. They got video on Spotify podcasts now. Stoked on that. And then, of course, Apple Podcasts as well. If you guys really, really like us or you don't, this is a multi-option answer. Give us a 5-star review.
Drop some love in the comments, dude. I love watching the comments.
Or a 1-star review, whatever. But those reviews help push this thing for us. We put a lot of work into it to have guys like Brett here. And, we got an awesome roster of athletes. And there's plenty more to come. So appreciate you taking the time to come, Brett. We're definitely going to have you back on. I want to talk about Big Hill Jam after you do it. We want to maybe reference some footage. We can throw some video up for people to see on the YouTube side. Because that's cool to see. A guy like you, sledder going to a massive moto event. So I'm stoked for you.
Yeah, thanks, man. It should be really fun. Thanks for having me on.
Well, safe travels, Brett. We will see you in a couple months again.
Thanks, dude.